A retired soldier is stopped at a U.S. airport by a canine dog that won't let him pass. Not because of danger, but because of a letter in his bag. A letter from a fallen comrade. Meant for a daughter who never knew her father. Behind it lies a truth the military buried, and a love that never got to speak. If this kind of story moves you, real, raw, and quietly powerful, don't forget to like and subscribe. What happens next may change the way you see silence, memory, and what it means to come home. The airport buzzed with the usual chaos of early morning departures. Footsteps clicking on tile, voices echoing in sharp bursts over the intercom. Coffee cups clutched like lifelines. Among the current of travelers weaving through TSA lines and digital check-ins, walked a man who looked like he belonged in a different time zone, or a different decade altogether. His boots were worn but polished. His jacket, military-ackle but civilian cut, hung heavy with dust from long miles traveled. His name was Cole Halstead, a retired Army sergeant with salt at his temples and an ache in his bones that didn't quite have a name. In his hand was a battered leather messenger bag, and in that bag, inside a faded envelope curled at the corners, was a letter. There was no name on the front, just 3 words, handwritten in blocky faint script, deliver by hand. No address, no seal, no return mark. Just the peculiar weight of the request and the responsibility it carried. Cole hadn't planned on being here. He didn't have family in California. He wasn't going home or off to war. He was simply moving through, or at least he thought he was, as he stepped into the security line at Phoenix Sky Harbor's Terminal 2. A familiar scent hit him, clean soap, rubber soles, and the sharp edge of processed air. It was the smell he'd known in every checkpoint, in every hangar, in every checkpoint from Kabul to Kandahar. But this one? This place felt off. Maybe it was the weight of the letter. Maybe it was the fact he hadn't slept in 36 hours, or maybe it was the canine unit that waited just ahead. The dog was a German shepherd, perfectly still at the side of a young female officer. The handler gave Cole a quick nod as he placed his bag on the belt and stepped forward, arms up, chin level. He'd done this 100 times, maybe 1,000. The scanner whirred. The officer waved him through. And then, everything changed. The dog moved. Not a casual shift, not a twitch or flick of the ears, but a hard, pointed step forward, muscles coiled, body stiff. It locked eyes on Cole, and then it barked. Once, loud, sharp, the kind that bark that makes everyone stop moving, the kind that empties a terminal of breath. The officer jerked the leash, startled. Ranger, heel. But the dog didn't heel, it growled. Took another step, then another. The leash went taut. People paused in their steps. Bags were pulled back. The silence thickened. Cole's chest tightened. Not out of guilt, not fear, but recognition. The dog was looking at him like it had seen a ghost. "Sir," the officer said cautiously, her hand now hovering near her belt. "What's in your bag?" "Just clothes," Cole replied calmly, but his voice was lower now. "Who's it for?" He looked down. The bag hung from his shoulder like it carried an anvil. "It doesn't say." The officer glanced at her colleague. The dog kept barking. A TSA supervisor approached, older, weary aide. "Let's step to the side," he said. Cole followed. He always followed orders. They unzipped the bag. Clothes, toiletries, a paperback novel with a cracked spine. And the letter. The officer picked it up, studied the front. "No name? Nope." She turned it over. "Deliver by hand." The dog barked again, louder this time. It pawed forward, nose in the air, focused. The officer stiffened. "He's never done that before," she muttered. "Not unless..." "Unless what?" Cole asked, watching her carefully. "Unless he smells something familiar, or... death." Cole's jaw tightened. "He's trained for explosives?" "Yes. Search what you want." But the dog wasn't reacting to his belongings. It was reacting to him. "Mind if we ask where you got this letter?" the TSA supervisor asked, nodding toward the envelope. Cole hesitated, not out of defiance, but respect. "From a friend," he said, "or a promise from someone who didn't come back." The supervisor's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes softened. He stepped back, motioning to the handler. "Let the dog get close." The handler loosened the leash. The dog walked slowly, nose twitching. When it reached Cole, it stopped, not at the bag, not at the shoes, but at his chest. The letter. It sat motionless. Then slowly, its ears dropped. A whimper escaped. It sat. Everyone was quiet. He recognizes it, the handler whispered. Recognizes what? The scent, the paper, maybe even who wrote it. Cole felt the weight of the past pressing through the present like heat through glass. Who trained him? My brother, the handler said, glancing down. He served in Afghanistan, Kandahar unit, passed 2 years ago. Cole looked into the dog's eyes. Then we probably knew the same men. She nodded, slowly. Ranger doesn't respond to strangers, or noise, but he knows soldiers, especially ones who come back carrying pieces of others. Cole didn't say anything. He couldn't. Not yet. The letter felt heavier than before. The secondary screening room was colder than the terminal outside, and quieter too, save for the hum of fluorescent lights and the low radio chatter coming from the guard's shoulder unit. Cole sat upright, still and silent, his eyes following the handler as she paced slowly across the room, with Ranger now calm, but alert. The supervisor, named Jenkins as his badge indicated, sat opposite Cole with a plastic tray on the metal table between them. Inside, Cole's belongings lay neatly arranged. One change of clothes folded tight, a worn toiletry bag, a paperback novel with a bent spine, the battered envelope, and next to it something that hadn't been noticed until now, a single rusted gold-colored barrette. It looked old, the kind of object easily mistaken for trash, but Jenkins picked it up with care, holding it under the sterile light as if trying to place its origin. "This yours?" he asked, not accusingly but with curiosity. Cole looked at the object and exhaled slowly. "It was in the same envelope," he said. "Didn't know it was in there until this morning." Jenkins glanced at the envelope again, then at the dog, who still hadn't taken his eyes off Cole. "Nothing dangerous in your bag," he muttered, mostly to himself. "No residue, no tech, no organics that trigger alerts." He looked back up. "So why the hell is the dog reacting like that?" Across the room, the handler had crouched next to Ranger, whispering to him, palm brushing over his neck in calming strokes. She was young, but not green. Her movements were efficient, confident. She glanced back at Jenkins and gave a slight shake of her head, then stood up and crossed the room. "He's not reacting to the bag," she said softly, her voice a notch lower than before. "It's not explosives, not narcotics." She looked directly at Cole. "It's him." Cole didn't flinch. He knew how it looked. A man with a vague story and an unmarked envelope, caught by a military-trained dog in an airport. Suspicion was natural. But there was something about the way the handler was studying him now that made him feel seen in a way that wasn't about protocol. It was personal. She pointed toward the envelope. "Where did you get that?" "Camp Bastion. Last year. From a kid." Well, he wasn't a kid, but he looked like one. He'd taken shrapnel to the chest. Didn't make it. His throat tightened. "He gave me that letter right before we medevaced him. Told me to make sure it got to someone. Someone who mattered. Said I'd know when the time came." Jenkins folded his arms. "That sounds noble, but a story doesn't verify an object. You sure you didn't open that letter before today?" Cole's eyes didn't waver. "No, I don't read what's not mine." The handler's gaze dropped to the envelope again. "It smells old," she said, "but not dusty, like it's been close to skin, held tight." She reached out carefully and picked it up, turning it over. "No fingerprints but yours," she muttered, "except maybe faint traces on the barrette." She picked up the hair clip again, examining the metal. "You ever see something like this before?" Cole's voice was hoarse. "Not since I was a kid. That style, it's cheap, probably drugstore. But the engraving, that's hand-done." She looked again. There, just beneath the rust and flaked gold paint, a tiny etching. 3 letters. M.R. She turned to Jenkins. "We need to check DAW Teleferts." Jenkins gave her a look. "We don't have clearance to open military personal effects records on a whim." She stepped closer, her voice quiet but edged with something new. Urgency. "Then pull records on K9 deployments. Ranger was active for 4 years before reassignment. Ask where he served. I think we'll find a match." Jenkins rubbed his temple. "This is a civilian airport, officer. We can't start running military trace investigations because a dog got twitchy." She looked him dead in the eye. "He didn't get twitchy, he barked. He growled. Then he sat like he was mourning. Dogs don't do that unless they remember something, and the only things he remembers are war zones and handlers who died in them. Cole shifted in his chair. You say? She turned to him. I said he only reacts like this when he smells something from downrange. Burnt skin, blood, adrenaline. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. Or someone he's already lost. The room went quiet. Jenkins finally sighed and stood. I'll call CBP and loop in a DOD liaison. But I want both of you here until we sort this out. The handler nodded. Fine. Then, to Cole. What was the name of the soldier who gave you the letter? Cole shook his head. He only told me his first name, Raphael. Said the rest wouldn't matter. That whoever I was supposed to find would already know. Ranger let out a low, barely audible whine. The handler knelt beside him again, placing a hand gently on his flank. It's not just grief, she whispered. It's memory. That's why he sat. Cole stared at the letter lying flat on the metal tray, next to the barrette with those etched initials. He thought of Raphael, young but with eyes that had already seen the worst of men. He remembered the way he clutched the envelope as the helicopter blades spun above, how his fingers trembled, not from blood loss but something else, fear maybe, or conviction. The envelope had been soaked through when Cole received it, not with blood, but with something almost heavier, intention. The handler finally broke the silence. You said he gave it to you as he was dying. Cole nodded. Yeah. Whispered something too. I didn't catch it all, but the last word was, daughter. Her eyes narrowed. Did he look like me? Cole paused, studying her now. The set of her jaw, the angle of her cheekbones, the way she carried herself like she'd always had to fight for space. His breath caught slightly. You're not saying... She didn't finish the sentence. Neither did he. Jenkins returned then, phone still in hand, his face pinched with tension. We may have a problem, he said. There's a record tied to the initials MRC and a match with the serial number etched on Ranger's original collar. The thing is, that soldier was never listed as officially deceased. Just missing. There's not possible, I saw him die. Jenkins shook his head. According to DOD records, Rafael M.R. Calderon is still classified as MIA. No death certificate, no recovery, nothing. But here's the part that makes no sense. His file was updated just last month. The room grew heavier with silence as the echo of Jenkins' last words settled between them like a weight no one dared lift. Rafael Calderon, listed MIA, had a file recently touched by unseen hands. The handler, her name now known as Officer Marin Calderon, stood with a stillness that spoke more than her expression ever could. Her eyes never left the envelope, nor did the German shepherd's. Cole's fingers curled unconsciously on the table's edge, a subtle defense against the rising tide in his chest. I told you, he said quietly, voice rasping like gravel. I'm just the messenger. Jenkins raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Messenger for a man presumed dead, carrying a letter to a recipient you can't name, and with a military K9 responding like you're a walking ghost. He leaned in slightly, tone sharpening. That's not nothing, Mr. Halstead. Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. The words didn't come easy anymore. Not since the desert. Not since everything that happened after the night the sky turned red over Kandahar. Marin turned toward him then, gently, like approaching a cliff edge. Did he say anything else, this Raphael? Cole looked up, eyes tired but unwavering. He said, I'd know when it was time, that was it. She frowned. And you think now is the time? Cole's gaze drifted to the dog. He does. The answer lingered in the air, unanswered yet undeniable. Jenkins reached for his radio. You need full identity verification. I want a biometric check on Halstead. Background, service record, psychological profile. If we're pulling a string, I want to know what's at the other end. It didn't take long. Within 15 minutes, a Homeland liaison entered the room, tablet in hand, uniform tight with bureaucracy. He barely looked at Cole as he placed the device on the table and swiped through a classified file interface. Cole Travis Halstead, he read aloud. Born Missouri 1979. Enlisted U.S. Army 2001, deployed 3 times. Last known unit, Bravo Company Task Force Talon, Kandahar Province. He stopped. His tone changed. Unit was ambushed in 2012. 6 KIA, 3 WIA, 1 survivor. You? Cole stayed still, but his fists clenched. The liaison kept reading. Honorable discharge 2013. Diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Hospitalized twice. One incident involved unauthorized travel through a restricted compound in Texas. No charges filed. Jenkins raised his eyebrows. You've had episodes? Cole didn't respond immediately. Then, slowly. I've had memories. The kind that don't go quiet when you ask them to. The liaison turned to Jenkins. He's not flagged as a risk, but he's fragile and unpredictable under pressure. Jenkins folded his arms. That's comforting. Marin looked between them. That doesn't mean he's lying. Plenty of good men came back broken. That doesn't mean they imagined what they lived through. Jenkins nodded slightly. Maybe, but he's the only link to this letter, and if this Rafael Calderon is connected to her, he gestured toward Marin, then we have a whole other issue. She bristled. We don't know that yet. Cole finally broke in. Are you all acting like I'm hiding something? Jenkins scoffed. Because you are. The liaison stepped in, tone clinical. We scanned the letter for latent prints. Yours are dominant. But there's another set. Partial, faded, but consistent with Calderon's last medical intake from Bastion's combat hospital. Marin turned. That's confirmation, isn't it? The liaison frowned. He supports the timeline. It doesn't confirm the intent. For all we know, he handed Halstead contraband, intel, or something worse. We don't know what's in the letter. All eyes turned to Cole. He leaned back in his chair, voice firm. I told you, I haven't read it. I made a promise. Jenkins pressed. Even now, with everything going on, you're not curious? Cole looked at the envelope. Of course I am, but I've carried this thing across oceans, deserts, airports. Through nightmares, I'm not about to break a dead man's trust when I'm this close. Jenkins stood, frustration boiling. This isn't about promises anymore. You're a witness, maybe a suspect. This letter could be part of something bigger. Cole met his gaze without blinking. Then open it, but do it without... The tension in the room spiked like a wire drawn too tight. But it wasn't Cole who broke it, it was Ranger. The dog stood, took a slow, deliberate step forward, and pressed his snout gently against the envelope. Then he looked up at Marin and whimpered. She crouched beside him, her hand instinctively brushing his back. He knows, she said. I don't know how, but he knows. Jenkins hesitated. So, what's the call? The liaison shrugged. We could send the letter to Quantico, analyze the ink, paper, scent compounds. Could take weeks. Cole chuckled bitterly. Meanwhile, the only people who knew what this letter was meant to say are either dead or sitting in this room. Jenkins folded his arms again. If it really matters that much, why did he trust you and not someone in his own family? Cole answered slowly, as if the words were being pulled from someplace deep and rustic. Because maybe I was the only one left. Because maybe I watched him die and held his hand when his own blood brother couldn't be there. Because sometimes, that's enough. The liaison checked his watch. Well, the longer this drags out, the more complicated it gets. I need authorization to escalate. Until then, you're not going anywhere, Halstead. Cole looked at the door. Wasn't planning to, but something had shifted in the room. Not just the tone, but the sense of it, as if a current had begun to move beneath the surface. Marin stood slowly. I want to talk to him. Alone. Jenkins looked skeptical. You think that's wise? She glanced at Ranger. He doesn't think he's a threat. Jenkins nodded toward the mirrored glass. You have 10 minutes. We'll be watching. As the others exited, Cole and Marin remained, Ranger settling at her feet like a shadow come home. She waited until the latch clicked behind them before speaking. You said Raphael whispered something when he handed you that letter? Cole nodded. Yeah. His last words were, she doesn't know. Marin's voice caught. Did he say my name? No, Cole said softly. But he said she had a fire in her, said she'd grow up with half of him missing and never even know why. Her breath hitched. I was 10 when he deployed. My mom said he was gone, MIA. We never got a body, never got closure. Cole's eyes were heavy. I think this letter is his apology. Or his explanation. She looked down at the dog. Ranger would have known him. If they served together, he'd remember. Dogs don't forget people who die for them. Cole nodded. Neither do people. We just get better at pretending. Outside the room, Jenkins spoke into a headset. Get a contact at DOD. Ask for Rafael Calderon's service logs. Unredacted. I want to know who signed off on his MIA classification. The liaison frowned. Why? You think there was a mistake? Jenkins didn't answer right away. I think this letter didn't just get lost. I think someone wanted it buried. The moment was heavy with hesitation. The kind of weight that comes not from fear but from reverence. Marin stood beside Cole, fingers hovering above the worn envelope as if it might burn her. Jenkins paced outside the glass, clearly impatient, clearly tired of the restraint. You've carried it for so long, he murmured. Sometimes I forgot I wasn't supposed to open it. Sometimes I wondered if I'd end up dying with it still unread. Marin didn't reply at first, only looked at him, and then finally, after a long pause, said quietly, if this letter has something to do with me or someone I should have known, I want to read it. And I want to read it now. Cole nodded once, slowly, and nudged the envelope forward with his knuckles. Then do it. You're his blood. If anyone has the right... She didn't wait. With a careful hand she broke the seal. It didn't open with drama or flourish, but just a quiet release of air and creased paper that had waited too long to be touched. She pulled out a single sheet, folded once. No photograph, no keepsake, just one page of handwritten text. Her eyes scanned the first line and she froze. Her breath caught audibly. She kept reading. Cole watched her face shift, not dramatically, but like glass under pressure, hairline cracks of emotion moving across her features. He didn't ask what it said. He waited. When she looked up, her eyes glistened and she handed the paper to him without a word. He unfolded it and read, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home. Maybe it was quick, maybe it wasn't. Either way, I need you to do something for me, brother. Take this to her. Don't leave it in a mailbox. Don't email it, don't call Huntage it. Put it in her hands. She deserves to see it in someone's eyes, that I didn't forget her, that I tried. Her name is Eva Calderon, she's my daughter. Cole let the letter fall to the table like it weighed more than steel. Eva, he said, almost whispering. Marin turned toward him, voice low. That's not me. He blinked. But your last name? She nodded. I know. But I'm Marin. He had another daughter. Half-sister, maybe. My mother never spoke of her. But I remember, one time I heard my dad on the phone, saying the name Ava, with a softness I didn't recognize. I thought it was a lover. Maybe it was... Cole leaned back, mind racing. So the letter wasn't for you, not directly. It was for a daughter he couldn't reach. Jenkins entered the room then, not bothering to knock. We ran the name. Eva Calderon, age 16, resides in Chandler, Arizona. Less than 15 miles from here. Cole looked up, stunned. She's here, in this state? She lives with her aunt. Mother deceased. Father listed as unknown on birth certificate. She's a minor, which means... anything involving her goes through the state. Marin turned sharply. She's not just a case, she's his daughter. She has a right to know. Jenkins didn't budge. You think I don't get that? But this is now a custody system matter. You bring a 16-year-old into contact with a stranger carrying a war letter from a man listed MIA, and suddenly we've got news vans and lawyers outside the door. We do this clean or not at all. The liaison, who had quietly re-entered, spoke up. We also found a cross-ensign. Rafael Calderon listed next of kin under a different name. Maria Reyes Calderon. Died in a car accident 3 years ago. Guardian status transferred to one Daniela Reyes, the maternal aunt. Cole frowned. Why would Rafael hide her or keep her separate from Marin? Marin's voice was taut, because he was a soldier, and soldiers know better than anyone that the people closest to them become targets. Maybe he wanted to protect her from who he was. Jenkins sighed. Doesn't matter why. What matters is that she exists. And now we have to figure out how to get this letter into her hands without causing a legal firestorm. Cole stood slowly, his fatigue sharpened by adrenaline. I'll do it. I'll deliver it myself, just like he asked. Jenkins turned to him. Absolutely not. You're not a family member, you're a stranger, and based on your record, an unstable one. Cole's voice rose, not with anger, but resolve. I'm the only one who made it out of that damn valley. I'm the one he trusted when his lungs were filling with blood. And I'm the one who's carried his last words halfway across the world, while you people sat in air conditioning pushing paper." The room quieted. Marin looked between them. "There's another way," Jenkins scoffed. "Oh, please." She held up the letter. "What if I go with him?" Jenkins hesitated. "He's not your responsibility." "No," she said calmly. "But she might be." Cole looked at her. "You'd do that? After everything?" She nodded. "If Eva is his daughter, she's family." And she tapped the paper. "This is a piece of her life she never got to choose. She deserves to hear it from someone who lived it, and someone who lost it." Jenkins looked at the liaison, who shrugged. "It's unconventional, but legal if Marin's present and assumes full guardianship oversight during the exchange. We just need sign-off." Jenkins ran a hand through his hair. "Jesus, this is going to be a nightmare if it leaks." Marin folded the letter back into the envelope, her voice firm. "Then it won't." She turned to Cole. "Can you be ready in an hour?" Cole gave a faint smile. "I've been ready for over a decade." Jenkins muttered, "This better not blow up in my face," but even he couldn't deny it. Some stories were too human to process through protocol. Some truths needed to be passed hand to hand, the old way. Outside, Ranger stood at attention near the door, as if he too had sensed what came next would be something no training manual could cover. Cole stepped past him, the envelope secure in his hand once more. But this time it felt lighter, not because the burden had disappeared, but because it had found its direction. The road to Chandler's stretched long and flat beneath a dusty sky that hadn't yet decided whether it would rain or simply threaten all day. Cole sat in the passenger seat of the unmarked SUV beside Marin, who drove in silence except for the occasional soft command to the GPS. Ranger laid curled in the back seat, his head resting between his paws, eyes flicking open with every bump in the asphalt. The envelope sat in Cole's lap like it belonged there. Marin glanced at him sideways as they passed a water tower marked with peeling paint. "You said you met him in Kandahar," she began quietly. "But you never told me how." Cole exhaled, his voice slower than usual, like he was dragging words from places that had long since sealed themselves shut. "Raphael was 22 when he got assigned to our unit. Fresh out of Fort Benning, standard infantry training. Kid still had freckles on his nose and called me Sarge, even after I told him 100 times not to." Marin didn't interrupt. Cole kept going. "He was stubborn, brave, annoying as hell. Smuggled candy into the barracks and called home every Friday like clockwork. The kind of guy who never lost his temper but would run through fire if it meant pulling someone out." Cole's eyes didn't leave the horizon. "He reminded me of my younger brother, only better. No arrogance, no edge, just this unshakable loyalty. Like he'd been born for it." We were on rotation together for about 7 months before the evacuation notice came down. Marin's hands tightened on the wheel. That was when, the final convoy out of Helmand province. We were covering the rear guard, supposed to hold position for extraction. It was quiet all day. Too quiet. When the sun started to drop, the valley lit up. Ambush, IEDs first, then mortar fire. We were surrounded before we could radio command. His voice turned rough. I remember screaming orders, dragging 2 of my guys back from the blast zone. I turned around and saw Raphael firing toward a ridge, shielding a comms unit with his body. He was shouting something, but I couldn't hear it through the noise. He paused, his hand gripping the door handle. Next thing I knew, the ridge exploded. Dust, smoke, and everything went black. Marin glanced at him. "But you survived." "Yeah," Cole said. "Barely. Woke up in a crater with my right ear bleeding and half a squad missing. One of the medics found me 6 hours later." He looked down at the envelope. "They told me Raphael was KIA. No body recovered. I assumed he was gone like the rest of them." "How did you get the letter?" Cole's throat tightened. "The month after I got back stateside, I checked into the VA for psych evals. PTSD was brutal. Couldn't sleep, couldn't be around crowds. One night I got a call from a man who wouldn't give his full name. Just said he was someone who owed me a favor. Said Raphael had passed him this envelope during their last night on base. Told him if anything happened, to find me. He said Halstead will know what to do." Marin frowned. "This man, who was he?" "He called himself Elias. But it wasn't his real name, just a name for the message. And where is he now? Cole's voice dropped. Gone. Disappeared 2 years ago, no phone records, no bank trail, just the only other man I could have asked about what really happened that night, about why Raphael didn't leave with the rest of us, or why the DOD marked him MIA instead of KIA. Marin's voice darkened. You think there's more to this than just bad luck? Cole hesitated. I think something went sideways in that valley, and someone wanted it forgot. Cole looked down at the envelope. No, he remembered, and he wanted someone else to. They drove on in silence for a while, the city creeping closer on the edges of the highway. Strip malls, car lots, faded flags fluttering half-heartedly on poles. The GPS pinged. Turn left in 600 feet. Cole sat forward slightly, staring through the windshield as they turned onto a residential street lined with low houses and sun-faded lawns. This is it? Marin checked the address again. Yeah. That's the house. They parked at the curb. Across the street stood a single-ad home with peeling shutters and a rusting mailbox. Wind chimes stirred on the porch. There was a bike laid in the grass, a pair of flip-flops near the steps, and music faintly drifting from a cracked window. Cole felt his pulse thump in his throat. You sure we should do this? Marin looked at him. Are you? Ranger sat up in the back, alert again. His ears flipped forward like he knew this was the moment. Marin turned off the ignition. We tell her the truth, carefully, and we let her decide if she wants to hear the rest. Cole nodded slowly, clutching the envelope tighter. As they stepped out into the dry heat, the front door of the house creaked open, and a teenage girl appeared, barefoot, wearing an oversized hoodie, her eyes sharp with curiosity and caution. She stepped onto the porch, blinking at them. Can I help you? Her voice wasn't timid. It was measured, guarded. Marin cleared her throat. Are you Eva Calderon? The girl's brow furrowed. Yeah, who are you? Cole stepped forward. My name's Cole Halstead. I served with someone who knew your father. I've got something for you. It's a letter. From him. Eva didn't move, didn't speak, but her eyes locked on the envelope in Cole's hand like it had hidden spy. Behind her, a woman stepped into the doorway, late 40s, dark hair tied back, face lined not with age but wear. Eva, who is it? He says he knew Dad, Eva said without looking back. The woman's face froze. Get inside. But Eva stood her ground. No. The woman stepped out, clearly tense. Ma'am, we're not here to cause trouble. This man was entrusted with something your niece deserves to receive. A final message, nothing more. The woman's gaze softened only slightly. You should have come through legal channels. Cole replied, I tried. For years. But this isn't about process. It's about what's right. Eva took a step forward. Can I see it? Her voice wavered now. Cole extended the envelope slowly. It's yours. I didn't read it. I promised I wouldn't. She reached out and took it with hands that trembled. And in that instant, something shifted, not just for her, but for Cole. The weight transferred. The silence between them held the space of every moment lost to war, to secrecy, to a letter that had waited too long to be heard. The moment Eva took the envelope into her hands, everything seemed to pause. The heat, the wind, even Ranger's breathing from the back seat. Cole watched her fingers tremble as she traced the name written in Raphael's unmistakable scrawl, and for a second he thought she might break down right there on the porch. But she didn't. Instead, she looked up at him with eyes that were far older than 16. Eyes that carried questions no teenager should ever have to ask, and said softly, Did you know him? Cole swallowed hard, his voice dry. Yes, he was my brother out there, not by blood but by everything that counts. She nodded once and stepped back, motioning for them to come in. Her aunt hesitated but didn't argue, stepping aside with a wary glance at Ranger, who padded in silently behind them. The house smelled like cinnamon and old photographs. The walls were lined with faded prints of family reunions and childhood birthdays, none of which bore Raphael's face. Eva led them to a small living room where she sat cross-legged on the floor, the envelope untouched in her lap. Marin sat beside her while Cole stood near the window, restless. Ranger settled near the door but didn't lay down, alert and focused as if he too remembered this kind of silence. Eva glanced at the dog. He's military, isn't he? Cole nodded. Was. Now he works with airport security. She tilted her head. He's been watching me like he knows me. Marin looked at Ranger, and then back at Cole, her voice curious. Has he been acting strange since we got here? Cole frowned. He's been more intense. Like something's... Marin stood and crouched near Ranger, her fingers brushing along the tag on his collar. Ranger, she said softly. Heel. The dog didn't respond. Instead, he stepped forward, slow, measured, deliberate, and nudged Eva's hand. She froze. What's he doing? Checking you? Cole said. Scent. Recognition. They remember better than we do. The aunt shifted uneasily in the doorway. He's not going to bite, is he? Marin said. He's not aggressive unless there's a reason. Eva looked at Ranger, who now sat directly in front of her, head slightly tilted, as if seeing her from another life. What's his name? She asked. Ranger? Marin glanced at Cole, then back at the dog. Actually, no. Cole blinked. What do you mean? That's what the handler at the airport called him. Marin took a breath. She stood slowly. His name was Whiskey. Cole stared. Whiskey. Marin nodded. It was a call sign. Kilo Whiskey 3. That's what they called him downrange. She looked at Eva. He served 2 tours in Kandahar before he was rotated out, specialized in explosives, retrieval, and personnel tracking. Eva looked down at the dog again. So he was with my dad? Marin hesitated. I don't know for sure, but if he was active during your dad's last deployment, Cole finished for her. Then yeah, he was there. There was a long silence. Then Cole stepped forward, speaking slowly, the way you walk across a frozen pond. Back then, each squad had 1 K9. Ours was a shepherd with a scar across his right flank just above the leg. Took shrapnel during a compound sweep, but he kept working through it. Wouldn't leave Raphael's side. Cole turned to Ranger. Marin didn't say anything, just reached down and gently parted the fur near Ranger's back right leg. There it was, a pale, jagged line, nearly healed but unmistakably a scar from something sharp and brutal. Cole let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. That's him. That's Whiskey. Eva's eyes widened. He was my dad's dog? Cole knelt beside her, his voice shaking. Just he was more than that. He was his shadow. Wherever Raphael went, Whiskey followed. Even slept outside his cot like a guard. The two of them were inseparable, Marin added quietly. Whiskey was reassigned after Raphael went missing. No one could handle him for months. He refused to train, refused to respond to anyone. They almost retired him early, said he was emotionally unfit for duty. Eva stared at the dog, now lying down with his head resting on her feet, like he'd known her all his life. But he found me. Her voice cracked. He found me. Cole nodded slowly. He remembered. It took him years, but he followed the only scent he had left of Raphael, and somehow, it led him to you. The aunt stepped forward now, less hostile than before. I had no idea. We never got any word. Just the MIA notice. Maria, Eva's mom, she never believed it. Said Raphael would find a way back. Marin sighed. He tried, in the only way he could. Eva looked up at them, eyes. Can I keep him? The question came so quietly it almost broke Cole's heart. Marin glanced at Ranger, Whiskey, then at Cole. That depends. He's still technically under government care, but maybe there's a way, Cole added. He's not just a service dog anymore. He's a piece of your father's memory. Claire. Whiskey looked up then, as if responding to the sound of Raphael's name. Eva leaned forward and rested her forehead gently against his. I don't remember him, she whispered. I never got to. Whiskey didn't move, just stayed there, still and present, like a guardian returned from war. Marin walked toward the window, her mind visibly turning over something on. He should look through the logs, deployment records. If Whiskey was assigned to Raphael's squad, there's more than memory tying them. There's evidence. Cole nodded. There might be mission reports, handlers' journals, anything to confirm what happened. If Raphael didn't die in that ambush, or if someone covered it up. He let the thought trail off. Why would someone lie about that? Cole met her gaze. Because war isn't just fought with guns. Thorbeth Gaius with files buried in vaults. With truths that never make it home. Whiskey whined then, a soft sound of recognition, or warning, as if something was about to surface that had waited too long in the dark. The living room had settled into an eerie quiet. broken only by the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional rustle of whiskey repositioning himself near Eva's feet. The late afternoon sun slanted in through the blinds, painting warm stripes across the floorboards. Marin sat at the small kitchen table, flipping through her phone with a concentration that made her eyebrows knot together. "Got it," she said at last, motioning for Cole to join her. The Department of Defense archival portal just granted temporary access to unclassified logs from Kandahar deployments. Keyword search returned a set of handler codes from Whiskey's unit. Cole leaned over her shoulder, his finger tracing a line of text. Handler Calderon Raphael M. Assigned K9 KW3. Last active date October 14. He paused. "That's the day of the ambush." Marin nodded grimly. "The report says presumed KIA after last signal dropped off. Body not recovered, no helmet cam data. Unit collapsed during mortar barrage." She scrolled further. "Status marked as non-recoverable asset, a euphemism for, we gave up the search." Cole straightened slowly, breath caught in his chest. "So they didn't find him?" Marin shook her head. "Not officially, just presumed." He turned toward the dog still resting peacefully in front of Eva. "He was there," he murmured. "He saw it. And we never asked." With quiet hesitation, he stepped closer and knelt in front of Whiskey, who raised his head slightly. "Whiskey," Cole said gently, "listen to me." The dog's ears twitched. "Whiskey, Raphael Calderon. Raphael Calderon." The moment the name landed in the room, Whiskey's entire body changed. He stood instantly, alert and stiff, then barked once, then again, then a third time. 3 sharp, evenly spaced barks that echoed through the room like coded knocks on a locked door. Marin froze. "Did he just—" Cole stared, stunned. 3 barks, that's not random. Eva looked at them both. "What does that mean?" Marin's voice turned tight. "In rapid deployment units, dogs are sometimes trained to use specific bark counts as alerts. 1 for clear, 2 for attention, 3 for imminent threat or recognition of unresolved danger." Cole nodded. Whiskey just signaled a threat connected to Raphael's name. He looked at Marin. Either that or he recognized something unfinished, something wrong. The room was utterly silent again. Then Eva asked, "What if he's still alive?" It came out small, almost childlike, but no one could laugh, no one could dismiss it, because in that room where memory and instinct coexisted, the impossible suddenly didn't feel so distant. Marin leaned back, visibly shaken. "There's one more thing I saw in the report." Secondary comms logs showed a weak signal ping from Raphael's locator beacon 2 days after the ambush. Cole's head snapped toward him. "We wrote him off that night, but it's there," Marin said. "A single ping, low confidence, dismissed as a glitch, no search ordered, no follow-up." Cole ran his hand over his face. "He might have survived the initial blast, maybe even crawled out," Marin said. "Long enough to trigger the beacon before it died." Eva sat very still, the envelope now open beside her. The page inside slightly crumpled where her hands had gripped it too tightly. "You said the other survivor, the one who gave you the letter. What was his name again?" Cole's eyes darkened. "He called himself Leah. But it wasn't his real name. He wouldn't tell me." "He wasn't just delivering the letter," she asked. "What if he saw something he wasn't supposed to?" Marin's eyes flicked up. "That would explain why he vanished." Cole stood, pacing now, energy returning like a storm gathering speed. "We need to find out who Elias really was. Cross-personnel deployed at Phobidante on that date. Maybe there's a match." Marin typed quickly, fingers dancing across the screen. "Hold on, we might get lucky." She scrolled through a manifest. "Here. One comms tech listed under the alias E. Ramirez. No service number assigned. Civilian contractor status." She blinked. "Last known location, Kabul. Declared missing in 2021. Cole exhaled sharply. Another one gone. Whiskey paced now, circling once, then sitting upright, watching the door, as if anticipating someone's arrival. Cole lowered his voice. What if he knew Raphael wasn't dead? What if they hid it because it didn't fit the report? Marin's voice turned grim. Or because Raphael saw something, said something, became in. Ava looked at Whiskey, but he never forgot. Cole crouched again beside the dog, pressing a hand gently to his shoulder. He remembered. And he came looking. Marin spoke slowly. "We could file a formal inquiry. Request exhumation of all MIA files related to the squad. Look for inconsistencies in forensics radio logs after action reports. Cole looked at her. We don't have weeks. If someone buried this, they'll bury deeper the moment they hear us digging. Marin nodded. Then we find Eliath, or what's left of his trail? Eva, still holding the letter, whispered, if he's alive, does that mean he chose not to come home? The silence that followed was brutal. Cole answered slowly, if he's alive, it means someone didn't want him found. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the porch. Inside, the pieces began to shift. One name, one dog's memory, and one letter that refused to stay buried. After the bark, after the revelation, after the long silence that followed Eva's whispered he might still be out there, Cole sat on the porch steps with the letter unfolded beside him. Eyes fixed not on the neighborhood but on the torn corner of the paper where Raphael's handwriting trailed off. Whiskey lay by his feet, not asleep, not tense, just aware as if he too understood that the letter had not simply found its recipient, but had opened a doorway neither man nor dog knew existed. Marin emerged from inside, closing the screen door gently behind her, and sat beside him. She handed him a worn notebook, its spine cracked, the cover half torn. Found this in one of Whiskey's gear crates at the station, she said. It's a field log, not official, more like personal notes. A handler's diary. Cole flipped through the pages, stopping at an entry dated 2 weeks before the Kandahar ambush. It read, KW3 growing restless. Refuses anyone but Calderon. Reacts violently to certain voices on comms. Raphael says it's nothing, but I see the way he checks over his shoulder now, like he knows something's coming. He stared at the ink, heavy and purposeful, the kind of handwriting made under pressure. He knew, Cole said, barely above a whisper. He felt it coming. Marin pulled out her phone again, swiping quickly through archived satellite records. We still have coordinates from that day, she said. I want to see what was 30 meters southeast of their last position. Cole leaned in, and together they stared at the image. Blurry, grainy, but enough to identify the shape of a natural trench. A narrow cut in the rock, easily missed in the chaos of evacuation. A hiding spot, he murmured, or a prison. Later that evening, while Eva slept on the couch with Whiskey curled at her side, Cole slipped the letter back into its envelope and studied the return information Raphael had scratched lightly on the corner. It hadn't registered at first, but now he noticed it wasn't just coordinates. It was an address. Not a military base, not a barracks. It was residential. Sunset Grove, Lot 14. Cole turned to Marin. He wrote this before the ambush. He was writing from here, from the States. Marin looked at the envelope again. That's impossible. Unless, Cole said, he knew he wasn't coming back and wanted this delivered to her no matter where she was. The address matched a trailer park south of Phoenix, about 40 minutes from Chandler. The name matched no registered property in Raphael's file, but a secondary cross-check pulled up a Maria Calderon listed as a prior resident. Eva's mother. He was tracking them, Marin said. He wanted to be close, even if from a distance. The next morning, Cole drove alone, with only Whiskey in the back seat. Marin stayed with Eva, explaining to her the process they were undertaking, how nothing about Raphael's story matched what the reports claimed, and how sometimes the government buries things not to lie but to forget. As the desert rolled past his windows, Cole's mind ticked over every moment. The night in the crater, the voice on the phone calling himself Elias, the courier with no name. He glanced into the rearview mirror and saw the same nondescript sedan that had been trailing him since the last rest stop. He had noticed it half an hour ago, and while it kept a respectable distance, it never changed lanes, never pulled off. Cole's instincts didn't scream panic, they whispered caution, the kind born from too many hours in hostile territory. As he turned onto a service road that cut through a grove of scrub trees, he slowed slightly, watching the sedan follow suit. He didn't stop. Not yet, but he tapped the steering wheel once, a silent signal to himself. Watch your six. Whiskey stood in the back seat, ears up. Felt it. Cole arrived at the trailer park just after noon. The place was sun-bleached and half-forgotten, littered with rusted bicycles, satellite dishes, and sagging porch furniture. Lot 14 stood at the far end, abandoned but not vandalized. The windows were boarded, but the front step had been swept recently. Someone had been here. Cole stepped out of the car, closed the door gently, and walked to the porch. As he knelt to examine the door handle, a voice called from behind him, "Looking for someone?" He turned slowly. A man stood 10 feet away, wearing government slacks and a dress shirt, no tie, sunglasses too clean for a place this dusty. "Who are you?" Cole asked. The man smiled thinly. "The one who filed the MIA paperwork on Calderon's unit. The one who signed off when they decided to stop looking." Cole stood, his pulse, "Because I'm curious what a man like you is doing chasing ghosts. And because if what you're carrying in that envelope ever becomes public, some very powerful people might have to answer very uncomfortable questions." Cole studied him. "So you're here to make it go away?" "No," the man said. "I'm here to see how far you're willing to go, and to remind you that some battles aren't meant to be won, they're meant to be forgotten." Whiskey growled low behind him. The man took a step back. "You think that dog's going to save you?" Cole shook his head. "He already has." The man sighed, adjusting his sunglasses. "You're close, House. But ask yourself something before you go further. Do you want to know the truth or do you want peace?" Cole stepped off the porch, standing face to face with him. Sometimes they're the same thing. Cole didn't back down. The man in the sunglasses stood coolly in the sun, unbothered by the heat or the dog now standing rigidly beside his former handler. Whiskey didn't bark. He didn't move. But his posture was sharp, locked on the man, like he recognized something beyond scent, something buried in memory. "You signed off on that MIA report," Cole said, voice flat but hard, "and now you're here. That's not a coincidence." The man adjusted his collar, glanced once at the trailer behind them, then back. "No such thing as coincidence in wartime. Or post-wartime, really." "Then why now?" Cole asked. "Why wait until I'm close to finding the truth?" The man exhaled slowly, like he'd been waiting to be asked that question. "Because the truth is only dangerous when someone knows what to do with it. And you—" He nodded toward the envelope still tucked under Cole's arm. "You're holding something that wasn't meant to survive." Cole narrowed his eyes. "The letter, not the words," the man said. "The medium, the material, the ink, the seal." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Did you notice it wasn't standard military paper? That it has microtext in the fibers?" Cole blinked. "You're saying the letter itself is coded?" The man nodded. "Your buddy Raphael wasn't just some grunt with a soft heart. He was in logistics, clearance level 4. He handled manifest supply lines, drop routes. When the mission shifted in late 2012, he was one of the few who asked too many questions." Cole's mouth was dry. "What kind of question?" The man smiled grimly. "Like why an entire unit was ordered to hold a worthless ridge for 36 hours with no aerial cover. Or why a transport convoy carrying humanitarian goods kept getting routed through a known Taliban corridor. Or why black-marked crates were sent without destination manifests." He paused. He kept records, tried to send them up the chain, but someone needed that ridge to go quiet. Needed those voices silent. Cole felt his stomach churn. "You're saying we were bait?" "No," the man said flatly. "You were disposable." The sun seemed to burn hotter now, pressing down through Cole's skin into his chest. "He knew," Cole whispered. "He always knew something wasn't right." The man nodded again, and he did what whistleblowers used to do. He wrapped it in grief, and gave it to the one man he thought might not be afraid to open it. Cole looked down at the envelope. His hands trembled now, not from fear, but from the gravity of what he had carried across borders, states, and years. "His inside?" The man shook his head. "I don't know the details. I just know that when Calderon disappeared, the entire Kandahar communications archive was quietly flagged, and a week later, 3 names from his rotation disk were reassigned to death." Cole looked up sharply. "You mean Elias, if that's what he called himself?" "There's no record of a contractor by that name, but there was one handler who survived that ambush, went AWOL, and was never heard from again." Cole's voice was low. "And now he's dead?" The man's lips tightened. "Unconfirmed, but I wouldn't count on him showing up." They stood in silence, the dry wind pushing gravel across the pavement between them. Cole's voice, when it came, was tight with disbelief. "All this, to protect a supply route?" The man's face hardened. just a supply route. An unlisted corridor used for Black and Moth weapons transport. Funneled under the radar, with plausible deniability. That ridge your squad died protecting wasn't random. It was the blind spot. Cole staggered back, suddenly remembering the wide, empty stretch of desert that had seemed so meaningless then. He kept a record, he said. Raphael. In the latter, the man nodded slowly. It wasn't meant for you. It was meant for his daughter. She was his legacy. And the letter isn't just a message, it's proof. Cole looked down at the envelope again, now aware it was more than sentiment. It was a data source. A Trojan horse for memory and evidence. Why not just destroy it, he asked. Why let me get this far? The man shrugged. Maybe I got tired. Maybe some of us still believe in truth, even if it's dangerous. Or maybe I needed to see what you'd do. You've got two paths now, Sergeant. You open that letter and expose it. Bring heat down on yourself, that girl and everyone else connected. Or you leave it buried and let her grow up thinking her father died a hero, not a liability. Cole stepped back toward the car, motioning for whiskey. The dog moved instantly, tail low, eyes locked. You saw what that dog did when I said his name. He remembers. And memory, no matter how buried. The man didn't follow. Just stood at the edge of the sun-bleached driveway, voice low. Be careful, Halstead. Not everything deserves to be resurrected. Cole drove in silence, the letter now riding on the seat beside him, its edges crisp but its meaning heavier than ever. He didn't need a lab to verify the paper. He didn't need microtext readers. He remembered Raphael hunched over in the barracks, sketching maps, muttering about manifest numbers. He remembered the last look on his face, somewhere between fear and resolve. As the highway opened before him, whiskey shifted, then sat up, body rigid. Cole followed the dog's gaze in the mirror. A car had pulled into the road behind them, not the same sedan but too familiar in posture. Cole gripped the wheel tighter. Or they're not done watching. The road home felt longer than it had any right to. Cole didn't stop, didn't check the rear view even when he felt the tension in the air thicken again. He kept one hand steady on the wheel and the other lightly brushing against the envelope on the passenger seat, like he was afraid it might disappear if he didn't keep contact. Whiskey remained perfectly still in the back, gaze fixed on the open desert beyond the window, ears shifting slightly with every unfamiliar sound. They pulled up outside Eva's house just after dusk. The porch light was on, casting a soft yellow glow onto the yard, and through the front window Cole saw her sitting on the floor with her knees drawn up, clutching something small in both hands. Marin opened the door before he even knocked. Her face was warm, eyes red-rimmed but steady. She didn't ask what happened. She simply stepped aside and he walked in. Eva stood as soon as she saw him, her expression unreadable. She looked not at his face but at his hands. Cole hesitated, then pulled the envelope from his jacket pocket and walked toward her, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he finally reached her, he held it out with both hands like an offering. This is yours, he said quietly. It always was. Eva didn't speak. She reached out and took it with a stillness that unnerved him. Her fingers grazed his and lingered just a second too long. Then she stepped back and sat down, turning the envelope over in her hands. Cole stayed standing, unsure what came next. Whiskey padded forward and curled at her feet again like he had never left. And then, slowly, Eva reached up to the collar of her hoodie and pulled something free from underneath. It was a thin chain, simple, worn, delicate. At the end of it dangled a small silver charm in the shape of a dog's head. Not generic, specific, the same make and model as the eye tags Whiskey wore on base. Cole's breath caught. Where did you get that? She looked at him then, her voice barely audible. Mom gave it to me before she died. Said it was the only thing Dad ever sent before he disappeared. No note, just this. Cole knelt slowly, eyes locked on the charm. That's unit issue. They only made those for K9 handlers deployed in Kandahar during the first rotation. There were only 15 ever issued. She looked down at Whiskey. He reacts every time I touch it. Cole nodded. Because it belonged to Raphael. She opened the envelope with careful fingers and pulled the letter free. This time she unfolded it entirely, revealing a second sheet that had been folded behind the first, tucked deep within. She read aloud, voice steady even as her hands shook. You're reading this, it means I didn't come back. I never wanted to leave without meeting you. without telling you what you mean to me. But war doesn't always leave room for goodbyes. I hope this letter finds you older, strong, full of questions, maybe even angry, and I hope someone brave enough is there to answer them. I need you to know something. If you ever want to understand who I was, who I tried to be, look at the man who brought this to you. His name is Cole Halstead. He is the man I trusted most in this world, the man who saved my life more than once, and the one I would have trusted to raise you if I couldn't. He knows my flaws. He knows my heart. And if he's standing in front of you right now, it means he never stopped trying to bring you what I couldn't. He is not your father by blood, but I promise you, he's the closest thing I ever had to a brother. And I believe, if you let him, he can love you like I always wished I had the chance to. The room was quiet. Marin had walked into the hallway and now stood with her back to the wall, one hand over her mouth. Cole stayed kneeling, stunned into silence, hands resting on his thighs. Eva folded the letter again, slower this time, then looked directly at him. "Did you know?" she asked. He shook his head. Not until now, but you carried this," she said. "For years." He nodded. "Because he asked me to." She stared at him for a long moment, then rose and walked toward him. She stopped just a step away, holding the folded letter in one hand, the charm still dangling from the other. And then, wordlessly, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Cole froze, breath caught in his throat. Then slowly, almost painfully, he returned the embrace. His shoulders shook once, then again, and then, for the first time in a decade, he wept. Whiskey rested his head on Cole's boot, eyes closed, as if the mission was finally complete. Later that night, the three of them sat on the porch, Eva curled in a blanket, Cole with a cup of lukewarm coffee, Whiskey stretched across the steps like a silent sentinel. No one said much. There was no need. The letter, now safely tucked inside a photo frame beside Raphael's charm, sat on the living room shelf. It no longer held questions, only answers. Only proof that the past, no matter how brutal, could still deliver something worth keeping. Cole looked over at Eva, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder, and he allowed himself a rare smile, not wide, not dramatic, but honest. He looked down at Whiskey, who gave one small huff in return, and for the first time in years, Cole felt something close to peace. If this story touched something deep in you, consider subscribing for more true-to-heart narratives like this one. We'd love to hear from you. What part of the story stayed with you the most? Was it Whiskey's loyalty, Raphael's hidden truth, or the moment Cole finally broke down? And where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment and let's connect through the stories that move us.